Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is John S. Ray's Oberlin College Diary, 1946, Part 17, and this is a continuation of Zook Family Memories Collection, or ZFMC number 42. January 1, 1946. This has been a big day of recuperation. I slept until noon and then all afternoon. Nancy Wilson seems to have laryngitis, a little worse, and was in bed all day. I hope she doesn't really get sick. I buckled down to work for a few hours this evening. Sam got pretty sick last night and still wasn't feeling too sharp today. January 2, 1946. This business of 4 classes and a lab on Wednesday doesn't go down too well. Nancy Wilson went to Browning House about noon. This evening I managed to wrangle my way in to see her. She doesn't seem to be too sick, but she might be getting the mumps. Hope not. Red started auditing classes this morning. This evening we broke Clement's bike all to heck. Had a beer and a bridge game about midnight. January 3. I shuttled between labs this afternoon. Organic chemistry is going to be interesting. I went to Hungry Club at the Grahams. The discussion was slightly abstract and labored. I tried to see Nancy this evening, but Mrs. Dudley wasn't able to let me in. So we exchanged notes. Her fever is up a little now, but she has her voice back. We won our basketball game, 31-6. January 4. Red and I really creamed the chemistry quiz this morning. I took some stuff over to Nancy this afternoon. Didn't make it to lab until about 4:30, then went to the Cleveland Symphony tonight. I might say that it was terrific. I had quite a chat with Nancy this evening. She doesn't feel too sharp. We took in about 6 brews this evening at Timmy's. January 5. I nearly slept through psychology this morning, but managed to make it all right. Then worked on plans for the dance decorations next week. I sent Nancy some flowers this afternoon and tried to see her, but I ran into the old Grundy witch. So I wrote her another note. Kay Denman was in town this evening, so we went to the basketball game together. We beat Wesleyan 65-60. Afterwards, at the dance, it seemed very unnatural to be with someone besides Nancy. Kay and I had a very interesting little talk. We had a few brews and some sandwiches with the lads afterwards at the pool hall. January 6. The weather is absolutely amazing. Warm, balmy, and lots of sunshine. Can't see how it'll last much longer. Red seems to have made tracks with beautiful Beth last night. I played bridge this morning with the lads. Then started work on my term paper this afternoon. Boosie was up and Frank Grandel and his wife were back. We had a little get-together with them tonight for about an hour or so at Presty's. I got to talk with Nancy for about 20 minutes tonight. Her temperature is a little higher, but she is not getting the mumps. Someone else is being tried for her part in the play. I've certainly been missing her. January 7th. I picked up a big bouncing C- in my organic blue book. I predict a C+ in my literature blue book. The physics lab this afternoon was very dull. I got in to see Nancy this evening for about half an hour. She thinks she'll be getting out tomorrow. I hope so. Someone else has her part in the play now. Very fortunate. I had a very fine bull session with Wayne Duff this evening. Red is still making tracks with Beth. January 8. Nancy got out of Browning this morning. This evening after dinner we had a long and, as far as I can see, very important talk. She really sent me far. I got nearly 2 days' work done in lab. We won our second basketball game tonight. January 9. A rugged routine today. Breakfast, 4 classes, lab, and students with Nancy. The students was not too sharp. Nancy said so too. We walked out to Glenn's for a short talk, then came in early because she has to study, and I have to hit the sack. I'm trying to get a cold. January 10th. Made a few final arrangements for the dance, then spent the afternoon in advanced organic chemistry. Very interesting work. Then went to Hungry Club with Nancy this evening. The discussion was on the different college plans and pretty interesting. We both had studying to do, so we knocked it off early. I am going to bed early for my cold. January 11. I flubbed my first physical chemistry quiz this morning, had a big argument with Mr. Taylor this morning in class, then worked in lab all afternoon. This lab business is getting very dull. 5 a week is just 3 too many. Then I went to rec with Nancy and played bridge with Duffer and Ellie. Very stupid playing on my part. A good evening, though. January 12. Schwinn checked me out on the potentiometer experiment this morning. I worked all afternoon on the dance decorations, then finished them up after supper. Nancy and I came to the dance and had one fine time. She really sent me far. I'm going to slip and propose one of these evenings before I should if I'm not very careful. January 13. I worked breakfast and undecorated this morning by myself. Wayne Duff and I went to the Freddie Arts open house this afternoon. Quite a house. Nancy Wilson went to the hospital again tonight. I think it's the flu again. Poor girl. Hope she doesn't stay in very long. I miss her like mad when she's over there. 6 of us went out to Mother Richards for waffles this evening, and we had a fine old evening. January 14. The physics experiment was pretty tough this afternoon. I saw Nancy this evening for about an hour. She really seems to be sick this time. A temperature of 103 degrees and a splitting headache. They're giving her penicillin every 3 hours. The doctor hasn't diagnosed it yet. I don't like this at all. Maybe we'll know tomorrow. January 15. I flunked my psychology quiz from last week. Oh me. Nancy was much better this evening. She had a fever of 104.8 last night when I left. The doctor says she'll be in for at least a week yet. Maybe she'll have to leave then for the rest of the term. I certainly hope not. January 16th. Nancy was really sick this evening. Her temperature was 104 degrees all day, and the doctors have stopped the penicillin because her temperature is still up. The doctors seem to be stumped. They're not doing anything at all for her now. She seemed almost dazed this evening, but she knew I was in the room. They debated for quite a while before they let me in to see her. If she pulls through tonight, I think she'll make it all right. She's one scared girl. I'm praying she comes through okay. January 17. Nancy is much better this evening. However, the doctors still seem to be undecided as to what she has. I certainly hope she continues to improve. I wrote the folks this evening telling them that I love Nancy and plan to marry her. Hungry Club this evening was on religion, but still as intellectual as ever. Maybe we'll come down to earth next week. Fourth Floor won its 4th game, 19-12. Schaefer says he thinks he'll be with us next term. January 18. Nancy was better again this evening. We really got down to business. I told her again that I loved her and wanted her to be my wife. Before doing anything definite, however, we decided it would be best for me to write to Ted Zook, my uncle, and see what the chances would be for our children having decent health. I got the letter off this evening. We had a little Gables party at Presti's from 10 till 12. January 19th. I slept through psychology this morning and had my senior picture taken, then took my stuff over to Nancy this afternoon while she was sleeping. It gave me quite a charge to watch her wake up. I worked on my term paper this afternoon. This evening we had another long discussion at the hospital. She has talked to Skittle about the health our children would have, and he thinks they would turn out all right. So things are looking better all the time. I worked like mad on my paper again this evening. January 20th. I slept straight through for 12 hours last night and had 2 more big discussions with Nancy, and everything is set. However, we're going to wait to hear from Uncle Ted Zook before actually announcing our engagement. Had a big session with Schaefer this evening. We're both giving the ring situation a big think. January 21. I think I finally got my physics experiment squared around this afternoon. Nancy was nothing short of beautiful this evening. She has had no fever for 2 days and did a little walking today for the first time. She should be out by Thursday. I worked on psychology this evening for 2 hours. January 22. I got my combustion analysis underway this afternoon. Nancy had no fever again today. They're giving her iron shots to build her up. She hasn't heard from home yet. I might say that the more I see her, the more I want to see her. Here's hoping she gets out Thursday. January 23. This has been one long, hard day. I worked breakfast this morning and had 4 classes. Then spent the afternoon in lab and got something done. I worked 3 hours this evening on chemistry reports. Nancy is leaving the hospital tomorrow but will not go to classes until Monday. Her parents are more or less indifferent about this engagement business. Nancy called me later this evening about it. We'll try to settle it tomorrow night. January 24. Nothing but a big day today. I flunked my last week's psychology quiz again. I must start working in that course. I worked 7 hours on my combustion analysis and finished it late this afternoon. My results were phenomenally accurate, more accurate than Renfro's, so I guess all the labor was worthwhile. We had our first good discussion at Hungry Club this evening. It was on religion, and I might say that Friedman hung himself up. Nancy was kept over in the hospital today. We had another long talk and decided to postpone announcing our engagement in view of her parents' attitude about the situation. January 25. Nancy got out of the hospital this noon, and I might say it was great to see her up and around again. She's still pretty weak, though. We had another big discussion this evening. She had a long letter from her mother, and I would say that her mother came through in fine style. There are still several things to be squared around, and for the time being, we're going to be on an informally engaged basis, just telling our closest friends about the situation. January 26th. I slept through psychology class again, then got caught up in physical chemistry this afternoon. Nancy and I went to see the movie Love for Love this evening. The plot was too shallow and not capable of holding one's interest too well. Nancy was pretty tired by the end of it. A rather rugged session afterwards. January 27th. I slept late this morning and had the usual Sunday morning bull session with the lads. Nancy and I played bridge with Jane and Wes this afternoon while listening to the symphony. This evening, Nancy and I had a long talk. It seems that she feels much more deeply about music than I had imagined. This feeling of hers may lead to some trouble. January 28. Wayne Duff and I had a little chat this morning, and I've decided to swallow my pride for the time being with Nancy. We studied together this evening in the Gables parlor and got quite a bit done. I lost a heavy tray this evening at dinner, but didn't break a single dish. January 29. Stetson gave our psychology lecture this morning. He was very good. I got quite a bit done in lab and finally went to Glee Club practice this afternoon. Nancy and I had another long chat this evening, and I might say we really got things squared off. Quite a relief. January 30. So I slept through German again this morning. McCullough pulled a foobie on us in physical chemistry and came out with a definition quiz. Taylor very generously gave me a B+ in our literature blue book. Then I finished up 2 experiments in lab this afternoon and had Glee Club this evening. January 31. I more or less fluffed off today. No psychology quiz this morning, and I didn't do any lab work this afternoon. Nancy and I went to Hungry Club this evening. Dean Graham came across with a hypothesis concerning immortality that was really fine. I missed the Minneapolis Symphony to study chemistry. February 1. I had more physical chemistry done than anyone else this morning, then spent a long afternoon in lab blowing glass. But I finished the doggone experiment, then overslept this evening and didn't get to my Y group meeting in time to catch the lads. Damn it all. I picked up Nancy about 9:15 and we had another terrific discussion. Then met Red, Duffer, and Wes at Presti's shortly after 11, and we had one big bull session for 2 hours over our beer. February 2, a big day. I slept most of the afternoon and finished a physical chemistry report this evening before the formal. Nancy and I had one fine time at the dance. Quite a few of the lads went into Cleveland for the hockey game, Cleveland Barons. February 3. Had another good chat with Duffer this morning, then tore through the last 5 books for my term paper this afternoon. Nancy and I went to Glee Club concert this evening. We did pretty well for a change. Nancy and I had another long session at Gables. This can't go on much longer. February 4. Schaefer read the Zebra Derby out loud last night until 2, so I've been beat all day. Then went back to bed this morning after breakfast for 2 hours. The physics lab was dull as usual. A senior class meeting was held this afternoon. Bob Slaughter turned in my petition for class president, and Wayne Duff is going to act as my campaign manager. Nancy and I went to the lecture on atomic energy this evening before her concert hall. Then I picked her up again afterwards. A very pleasant evening. February 5. I think I finally hit a psychology quiz this morning. Didn't get too much done in lab because I was so sleepy. Nancy and I went to the artists' recital this evening, and I might say it was very enjoyable. Solveig Lunde, a graduate pianist from the Juilliard, played. A very personable young lady. We played bridge this evening, and I'll have to report my German in the morning without having even looked at it. Ho-hum. February 6th. I made it through German all right this morning. Very fortunate. Then got to lab pretty late this afternoon, but got something done anyhow. Nancy played in an ensemble on students this evening. It sounded good to me, but she said it wasn't too sharp. We had another little chat and a very good evening. February 7th. I got quite a bit accomplished in lab today. Nancy's mother wrote saying that Nancy shouldn't come to Sandusky, and that maybe she couldn't even return to Oberlin next term. An absolutely infuriating letter. However, I think we can fix things up all right. We went to the Grahams early this afternoon to help get on the meal. Then Nancy served the coffee and I carved the ham. I left early to meet Bruce. We put on our old clothes, found a banged-up ladder, and had a big time over at Hale's trying to get into the Yale-Princeton game. We managed to get over one wall via the ladder and a drain pipe, but got stuck there. The girls evidently saw us standing in the windows because they certainly made a big hoo-ha. A good evening. February 8. We had the first really interesting class under Dr. Nickel in 2 semesters this morning. He didn't lecture from his notes. We discussed for a change. Then worked in organic chemistry lab all afternoon. Nancy and I studied together for 3 hours this evening and got quite a bit done. Then had an interesting little bull session with Renfro this afternoon, and he suggests my going to Saudi Arabia. Had a few beers with Wes and Wayne Duff this evening later on. February 9th. I did a little work on my term paper this afternoon. This evening, the girls took us to dinner at Presti's before the Gables formal. We had a fine time, though the meal was very late. Nancy and I really had a big time at the formal. We both seemed to be falling harder all of the time. February 10. Nancy and I went to church this morning. Dr. Craig gave a very self-ingratiating little talk. Then I worked on my term paper a little this afternoon. We went to the band concert this evening. I'm afraid it wasn't too good, although the Gershwin with Mr. Dannenberg wasn't too bad. Nancy and I are having considerable trouble leaving each other in the evenings. February 11th. I made last-minute arrangements for our house rec this morning, then instructed my last physics lab this afternoon. The class election results were announced this evening. It seems that I had the largest number of first-place votes, but Bird won because PR adds up first and second place votes both. No one in the class knew that except Bird, who was head of the elections committee. However, it looks as if I'm stuck, because everything was done legally. Nancy and I went to the MB recital this evening. Baskin was really terrific. What a showman! I think we finally have the rooming situation squared off. February 12th. I worked all afternoon in lab and spent a long evening over the books. The term is almost over, so I can excuse myself for studying. February 13th. This has been a very long day. I turned in my term paper this morning. Nancy received an absolutely infuriating letter from her mother this noon, and Nancy was really mixed up. This evening she called her mother, and she can go to Sandusky now. Her mother seems to be completely unpredictable. Nancy was as happy as a little bird this evening when I went to Gables. This thing gets better all the time. February 14th. These papers are driving me nuts. I worked late in lab this afternoon and worked all evening over the damn books. This stuff has got to be done, though. February 15th, 1946. I turned in my literature paper this morning. Bruce took one of his written honors exams this afternoon. Then I worked in the lab again. Our benzidine may turn out fairly well after all. Mother Dudley had a terrific dinner this evening for the Gables workers. I grounded out my psychology paper. Nancy and I had a long discussion until midnight. I hope that I can eventually talk her completely out of her depressing moods. The gang had a terrific brawl at Presti's this evening. Wayne Duff said it was the best one he's ever seen in Oberlin. February 16th. I got up early this morning and copied my psychology paper just in time for class. Then finished up in advanced organic chemistry this morning and turned in my last report. Then slept most of the afternoon and started to work on my physical chemistry reports. Bruce and I almost disrupted the Navy party downstairs this evening. Hagner came in late this afternoon for the weekend. Nancy was working on her survey this evening, so I didn't pick her up until after 11. Then stopped in at the pool hall afterwards for a few brews. This Baskin lad is quite the character. February 17th. Rolled out this morning promptly at 10 and got to work on my physical chemistry reports. Quite a relief. The weather was beautiful today. Nancy and I had a quickie this evening, then studied about an hour for my 2 exams in the morning. February 18. I worked breakfast and had 2 finals this morning. I predict a B+ in German and a C+ in organic chemistry. Bruce Partridge took his last honors exam this afternoon and made cum laude. Good for him. I worked on physical chemistry this evening. We're sacking out early. Dean Bosworth was in the room about an hour this afternoon discussing the fact that 40 men are going to have to leave the building. February 19th. I worked on physical chemistry this morning for a while. I predict a B in the class. This exam week is a great institution. Lots of sleep and no labs. Nancy and I went to rec this evening and got into another big discussion later on. We made progress as usual. DeFazio's, the spot on Timmy's old site, opened today. They're planning to have beer and dancing in the basement. Sounds good. To be continued. Now we have one comment here from John S. Ray, the author himself, my wonderful father. Quote, ZFMC 42 received, read, and very much enjoyed. What an interesting, colorful cover. Timothy looks great. Reading my ancient diary takes me back a long time. I remember some, but not all of the names. Although I obviously had a lot of energy in my college days, I still enjoyed sack time as I do now. Keep up the good work. John S. Ray, Rocky River, Ohio. Well, that concludes today's presentation of John S. Ray's Oberlin College Diary, 1946, Part 17. Good luck to you with your own efforts in family history. If this is something that interests you, finding, preserving, and sharing old letters, diaries, and photographs, and interviewing elderly relatives while they're alive. You might consider checking out our website, Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray at peterjray.com. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.